Dr. Ilara Vance awoke to the sharp taste of dust in her mouth. The harsh sunlight stabbed at her eyes, forcing her to squint as she tried to recall what had happened. The last thing she remembered was the sudden, violent jolt of the starship being struck by the storm. A storm unlike any they had encountered in her years of space exploration. The ship had bucked violently, alarms blaring as she fought to hold on to the control panel, and then nothing. Now, she was lying on the scorched surface of a barren planet, the air dry and gritty. Her first thought was fear, the kind that paralyzed her for a moment. The landscape stretched endlessly, a vast expanse of red sands interrupted only by jagged rock formations that looked like the skeletons of some ancient forgotten beasts. There was no sign of the ship, or of any civilization. The planet seemed utterly lifeless, hostile, and unforgiving. Ilara sat up slowly, testing her body. Pain shot through her shoulder and ribs. She had hit something during the crash. Every breath burned, but she pushed it down. She had survived worse, she reminded herself, but she couldn't shake the feeling of isolation. She scanned the horizon and froze for a moment. A figure was moving slowly toward her. It was unlike anything she had seen before. Tall and lean, the creature had smooth, silvery blue skin that shimmered in the sunlight. Its limbs were long and graceful, ending in hands that looked almost human but with elongated fingers. Its face was angular, with deep, intelligent eyes that regarded her cautiously. Ilara's heart pounded. She had trained herself to stay calm in dangerous situations, but this was new territory entirely. "Who? What are you?" she managed to whisper. The creature tilted its head, studying her. Then, in a voice that resonated in her mind rather than her ears, it spoke. "I am Zirin." Ilara blinked, stunned. He didn't speak out loud, yet his words reached her perfectly. "You survived the crash. You are alive." "Yes," she said cautiously. I think I am." Her voice trembled. "Where are we?" "This world is called Ilara. Your vessel is destroyed. We must survive." Ilara's fear didn't lessen, but her curiosity began to push it aside. She had been to countless uninhabited planets before, but never one like this. Never with a being like Zirin. "Survive," she echoed in her mind. That word was simple, yet it held the weight of their reality. Zirin approached slowly, moving with fluid grace. He extended one hand toward her, not in threat, but in offer. Ilara hesitated, then took it. His strength was surprising, enough to steady her but not so much as to hurt her. They began walking, Zirin leading her toward a series of jagged rocks that offered a little shade. As they moved, the sun climbed higher, baking the sand beneath their feet. Ilara's human endurance was weak compared to Zirin's. His steps barely left impressions in the sand, while hers sank deep with every motion. "We need water," she murmured. Zirin nodded, understanding without needing her to elaborate. "Follow me." They climbed over a ridge and came upon a small, narrow canyon. The walls cast shadows that offered a brief reprieve from the blazing sun. Zirin knelt near the base, his hands moving in ways that Ilara could not immediately understand. Moments later, he cupped a small amount of water from a hidden crevice. The liquid was surprisingly cool. Ilara drank greedily. The water was metallic tasting but refreshing, revitalizing her tired body. Zirin drank too, slowly, deliberately, like he was conserving strength rather than satisfying thirst. She studied him carefully, realizing that despite his alien appearance, there was intelligence and care in his every action. "Thank you," she said softly. Zirin inclined his head. "We are allies now. Trust is necessary." Ilara nodded, though the word felt heavy. Trust. She had trusted humans before, but a being from another world was entirely different. She wasn't sure if she was ready for it. Yet, as the day wore on, They worked together to find a safer place to shelter from the relentless sun. Xiron's knowledge of the terrain was uncanny. He moved with an understanding of the land that bordered on instinct, guiding them to small caves and overhangs that provided protection. As night fell, the temperature dropped sharply. The desert planet became even more hostile, the cold gnawing through her thin clothing. Ilara shivered, curling up against the rock for warmth. Xiron stood nearby, his body radiating a soft heat that seemed almost comforting. "You sleep," he said simply. "I will keep watch." Ilara tried to relax, but sleep did not come easily. Her mind kept returning to the crash, the planet, and this alien being beside her. She had always dreamed of exploring the stars, but she hadn't imagined being stranded like this, dependent on someone or something she barely understood. Yet, as she watched Xiron's vigilant silhouette against the starlit sky, she realized that survival might not be impossible if they worked together. The next morning brought new challenges. They ventured out to search for food, and Ilara marveled at Xiron's abilities. He could detect edible plants and small creatures using senses she couldn't even comprehend. His movements were precise, efficient, and almost effortless. She, in contrast, had to be careful with every step, every motion. But she was resilient, and her knowledge of survival techniques combined with Xiron's alien skills made them a formidable team. Days turned into weeks. Ilara found herself slowly adjusting to the rhythm of life on Elara. She learned to move quietly across the dunes, to recognize the signs of a coming storm, to conserve her energy during the heat of the day. Xiron, in turn, began to learn about human habits, curiosity, and emotions. They communicated through a mix of mental connection and gestures, gradually bridging the gap between species. One day, while exploring a series of rocky ridges, Ilara tripped over a hidden crevice and fell. Pain shot through her leg, and she cried out instinctively. Xiron was there in an instant, lifting her with surprising gentleness. He examined the injury, and though she didn't understand the science, she could see the methodical way he applied pressure and used alien techniques to stabilize her leg. "You are strong," he said, almost a statement of admiration. "But humans are fragile. That is known." Ilara smiled weakly. "I guess I am learning the hard way." That evening, as they sat by a small fire Xiron had created using alien methods she didn't recognize, they spoke quietly about their pasts. She told him about her home on Earth, the research she had dedicated her life to, and the moment she had first dreamed of exploring the stars. Xiron shared stories of Kale Rin, his home world, and the responsibilities he carried. Though their languages were different, their shared experiences, the fear, the wonder, the desire to survive, created a bridge. A week later, a sandstorm swept across the planet. The winds howled like a living thing, sand lashing against every surface. They retreated to a cave, holding each other close to endure the night. Ilara realized that she felt something she hadn't expected, a deep sense of connection to Xiron. It wasn't just trust anymore. It was more complicated, more human. She wasn't sure what it was, but it gave her strength. By the end of their first month on the planet, Ilara and Xiron had established a rudimentary camp. They had water, a small area protected from the elements, and even basic food sources. They had survived together, and the bond between them had grown. Ilara looked at Xiron one evening as the twin moons rose over the horizon. His alien features reflected the soft glow of moonlight, and she felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest. Survival had brought them together, but she knew that what had begun as a partnership for survival was slowly becoming something more, a connection neither of them had expected, but both were beginning to value deeply. For now, there was no rescue ship, no promise of return to Earth, but there was trust, there was companionship, and there was the stubborn resilience of the human spirit. And in that harsh, alien desert, It was enough. The days on Elara blended together, yet each held its own trials. Elara had begun to understand the rhythm of the desert planet, the scorching heat of the day, the cold of the night, and the constant shifting of the sand dunes. She had also grown more accustomed to Xiren, the alien who had become her companion, protector, and teacher in this harsh new world. One morning, as the twin suns rose low over the horizon, painting the sands gold and red, Elara stirred from her sleep. Xiren was already awake, standing outside their shelter, his gaze scanning the horizon. His posture was relaxed, yet every movement suggested a readiness to act at a moment's notice. "Morning," she called softly, careful not to startle him. "Morning," he replied in the same resonant voice that vibrated in her mind. "The wind patterns indicate a storm in the east. We must gather supplies." Elara rose slowly, stretching her sore muscles. She had begun to appreciate how her body ached less each day. The survival experience was strengthening her in ways she had never anticipated. She followed Xiren as he led her toward a cluster of rocks where he had previously spotted edible plants. The plants were unlike anything she had ever seen. Tall, thin stalks with translucent leaves that glimmered faintly in the sunlight. Xiren knelt beside them, touching the leaves lightly with 2 fingers. He then pressed his palm to the ground, and the soil seemed to pulse beneath his touch. A small hollow opened, revealing several thick, bulb-like fruits. "These are safe to eat," he said, watching her intently. "They provide nutrition and hydration." Elara picked one up, examining its translucent surface. The fruit smelled faintly sweet, almost like honey, and she took a cautious bite. The taste was strange but pleasant, and she quickly passed some to Xiren. He consumed it slowly, his eyes watching her reactions. There was an unspoken understanding between them, each learning from the other, each observing and adjusting. After they gathered enough, they returned to their shelter, where they stored the fruit carefully in a hollow section of the rocks. Elara began preparing a small area for sleeping and working, using sand and stones to create boundaries. Xiren observed silently, occasionally offering guidance or adjusting her placements with precision. "You are improving," he said finally, a note of approval in his voice. "You learn quickly." Elara smiled faintly. "I have to. There's no one else to do this with me." "Yes," he replied simply, though the weight of his words lingered. There was a hint of something else in his tone, a recognition of the bond that had begun to form between them. Elara felt it too, but wasn't ready to name it. For now, survival came first, and the emotional connection was still something she kept close to her chest. The next few days brought more lessons. Xiren taught her to move quietly across the sand, to sense shifts in wind that hinted at distant storms, and to notice subtle signs of the desert's wildlife. She discovered small lizards and insects that provided protein, and she learned which plants could be used for both food and basic medicinal purposes. One evening, while they rested under the shadow of a rock formation, Elara felt a sudden unease. "Xiren, do you ever get lonely?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He paused, his head tilting slightly. "Loneliness is a concept, yes, but my species does not experience it as humans do. Yet, I find your presence comforting." Elara blinked, surprised by the admission. There was a warmth in his words, a connection she had not expected to hear from a being so different from her. She looked down at her hands, unsure how to respond. "You make this place feel less empty," she said finally, her voice soft. "And you bring unpredictability." "It is interesting," he replied, a hint of amusement in his mind's voice. For a moment they sat in silence, watching the sky darken as the twin moons rose. The world felt impossibly vast, and yet somehow smaller, with Xiren beside her. She realized that their companionship was no longer just a matter of survival. It had become a source of strength, a foundation on which she could rely even in the face of uncertainty. A week later, they faced their first major challenge together. A sudden sandstorm, larger and fiercer than any they had encountered, swept across the horizon. Ilara and Xiren ran toward their shelter, the wind battering them with grains of sand sharp as glass. Ilara stumbled, and for a terrifying moment, she feared the storm might be too powerful. Xiren caught her effortlessly, holding her close as they pressed against the rocks. He lowered his body, shielding her from the worst of the wind. "Stay still. Breathe slowly. We will endure this." Ilara clung to him, her heart racing. She realized then that she trusted him completely, not just for survival, but for protection, guidance, and support. The storm lasted for hours, yet together they emerged relatively unscathed, though exhausted and covered in sand. That night, as they cleaned themselves and tended minor injuries, Ilara found herself speaking more openly than ever before. She talked about her life before the mission, the people she had loved, and the dreams she had once thought impossible. Xiren listened without interruption, occasionally offering insight or asking questions that revealed his curiosity about human emotions. "You humans are remarkable," he said finally. "Your resilience, your ability to hope even in despair. It is admirable." Ilara smiled, a mix of pride and humility. "I guess we have to be, don't we?" As weeks turned into months, their routines became more refined. They built a small garden using alien methods, Xiren demonstrated, allowing them a more reliable food source. They created a system for collecting water during the rare rains and learned to anticipate storms. During one quiet evening, as they rested after gathering food, Ilara felt a strange sensation, fatigue that wasn't just from the heat or physical exertion. She dismissed it at first, thinking it was merely exhaustion from her growing strength and activity. But over the next few days, the feeling persisted. Xiren noticed her slowing movements, the subtle changes in her appearance, and finally spoke. "There is a possibility. Something unusual is occurring in your body." Ilara frowned, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "Your physiology has begun to react to our proximity. This is rare. It occurs only under extreme conditions when human and alien interaction reaches a certain depth." Ilara's heart skipped a beat as she began to understand the implication. She felt a mixture of fear, confusion, and something she couldn't quite name. Xiren's eyes were calm, steady, and without judgment. "It is not harmful, but it will change your life." Over the next days, she experienced changes, physical and emotional. Xiren remained by her side, explaining what he could and helping her navigate the unknown. She realized that her feelings for him had deepened in ways she hadn't expected. There was a bond forming between them that went beyond survival, beyond companionship. One afternoon, as they explored a nearby canyon for resources, Xiren stopped suddenly. His senses detected movement she couldn't perceive. Small, predator-like creatures lurked in the shadows, their eyes glowing faintly. Ilara's pulse quickened. "We can handle them?" she asked, her voice tense. "Yes," Xiren replied. "Stay close." They moved cautiously, Xiren guiding her, his knowledge of the terrain giving them an advantage. When the predators attacked, Xiren's strength and agility protected them both. Ilara used her growing understanding of their environment to help trap and drive the creatures away. By the end, they were both bruised and exhausted, but victorious. That night, as they sat together in their shelter, Xiren extended his hand. Ilara took it, feeling the warmth and reassurance in his touch. "You are stronger than I imagined," he said softly. "And you have taught me patience," she replied. The emotional bond between them grew, quietly but unmistakably. They shared meals, stories, and long hours of silent observation, learning the rhythms of the desert and each other. Ilara began to feel a sense of belonging she had never known, even among humans. She realized that survival was no longer just about enduring the planet. It was about the connection she shared with Xiren, the alien who had become her lifeline. By the end of this part of their journey, Ilara had grown stronger, wiser, and more attuned to the world around her. She had also grown closer to Xiren, feeling a deep trust and emotional bond that went beyond words. The desert planet, once a place of fear and isolation, had become a place of learning, growth, and the beginnings of something extraordinary. And deep in her mind, she knew that her life and the life of their connection was about to change in ways neither of them could yet imagine. Ilara awoke with a strange sense of unease. Her body felt heavier, her stomach tighter than it had been before, though she could not yet understand why. Over the past weeks, subtle changes had begun to appear. She felt fatigue more deeply, her senses sharper, and her emotions more intense. Xiren noticed immediately, his deep eyes reflecting both curiosity and concern. "You are changing," he said softly, standing close to her. "It is the consequence we discussed." Ilara swallowed hard, the words settling uneasily in her mind. I think I understand," she whispered. "This is happening because of you, isn't it? It is not solely me. It is the environment, the proximity, the interaction. This is a rare occurrence," Xiren explained, his voice calm, steadying. "You will need care, protection, and understanding." Ilara nodded slowly. The initial shock was replaced by a mix of fear and wonder. She had always imagined extraordinary discoveries in space, alien life, uncharted worlds, but never something like this, a blending of life that transcended the boundaries of species. For days, Xiren stayed close, monitoring her condition. He guided her gently, helping her move when fatigue struck, finding edible plants and medicinal herbs that helped sustain her strength. Ilara was amazed at his attentiveness, his patient care, and the way he seemed to anticipate her needs before she could even voice them. "I never thought survival would involve this," she admitted one evening, sitting by their small fire. "I thought it would be about water, food, storms. But this is something else entirely." "Life is never simple," Xiren replied, his eyes reflecting the twin moons above. "But humans, you endure more than you know." Ilara leaned back against a rock, feeling the warmth of his presence. She realized that the bond between them had deepened far beyond friendship. It was subtle, a quiet trust and reliance that did not need words. She no longer saw him as simply an alien companion. He had become her protector, her teacher, and something she could not yet name. Their days were filled with both routine and discovery. They worked together to expand their small shelter, reinforcing the walls of rock with carefully arranged sand and natural adhesives Xiren demonstrated. They cultivated more of the strange fruits and roots Xiren had discovered, ensuring they had a steady supply of nutrition. The planet's creatures, once threats, had become predictable challenges, and together they navigated the dangers with skill and efficiency. One afternoon, while foraging for water in a hidden crevice, Ilara stumbled again, her energy lagging. Xiren caught her swiftly, his hands steadying her. "You must rest more," he said gently, concern evident in his tone. "Your body is changing. Do not push it." Ilara smiled faintly, leaning into his support. "I know, I feel like I should be stronger." Strength is not only measured by endurance or speed, it is also measured by adaptation, patience, and learning. She realized he was right. She was learning to adapt to not just the planet, but to the new reality growing within her. She felt a deep awe at the complexity of life. at the way her human body and his alien biology were beginning to intertwine in ways she could not fully comprehend. The weeks passed, and the changes became more pronounced. Zyron helped her track her health, creating a system of monitoring that included both physical observation and mental connection. He taught her to conserve energy, to manage fatigue, and to maintain balance despite the harsh terrain and unpredictable weather. One night, as they rested beneath the shelter, Ilara touched her stomach carefully. "It's real," she whispered. "I think it really is happening." Zyron nodded solemnly. "It is real, it is rare, but it is not a danger. Life, in any form, is resilient." They shared a long silence, the twin moons casting soft light over the desert. Ilara felt both awe and a deep sense of responsibility. She was carrying something extraordinary, a blend of human and alien life. She understood that their survival was no longer just about themselves. It was also about the life they were nurturing together. The desert, however, was unforgiving. One afternoon, while exploring a distant ridge for new food sources, they encountered a small group of territorial creatures. Their eyes glowed faintly in the sunlight, and their movements were quick, unpredictable. Ilara froze for a moment, her body weaker than it had been months ago due to fatigue. Zyron reacted instantly, placing himself between her and the creatures. He moved with a grace and precision that Ilara could only marvel at, striking and dodging with fluid efficiency. "Stay close," he instructed, his mind communicating calm and reassurance. Ilara followed, relying on his guidance, and together they managed to drive the creatures away. She realized then that despite her changes, she was stronger than she had been, not physically, perhaps, but mentally, emotionally, and strategically. Survival had taught her resilience, and Zyron had taught her the art of patience and observation. That evening, as they returned to their shelter, Ilara could feel a new sense of awe and wonder at life itself. She touched her stomach gently, sensing the small, growing life inside her. It was a reminder of both her vulnerability and her strength, a symbol of hope in a world that had once seemed so empty and harsh. Over the next several weeks, the pair continued to adapt to the desert planet. They improved their shelter, reinforcing it against storms. Zyron discovered ways to draw water from deep underground, and Ilara experimented with cultivating small plants using both alien techniques and her knowledge of biology. Their partnership became seamless, a blend of human ingenuity and alien adaptability. Emotions, however, became more complex. Ilara found herself thinking of Zyron even in moments of quiet solitude, feeling a warmth she could not name. Zyron, in turn, displayed subtle signs of connection beyond mere observation and protection. There were moments when he lingered near her, when his presence seemed to offer comfort that went deeper than mere companionship. One night, as the desert winds howled outside, Ilara spoke softly. "Zyron, I don't know what this means for us, for me, for this life growing inside me. It means we continue, we endure, we care." "That is enough for now," he replied, his words gentle yet resolute. She nodded, feeling the truth of his statement. Survival was not about certainty. It was about trust, care, and perseverance. They had survived storms, predators, and isolation together. Now they faced the most delicate challenge of all, nurturing life in the middle of an alien desert. As the weeks continued, the desert revealed its secrets. Ilara and Zyron discovered hidden oases, underground caverns with freshwater pools, and plants that had medicinal properties. They learned to anticipate storms with greater accuracy, using subtle shifts in wind and temperature to guide their movements. Each day, their knowledge grew, and with it, their confidence. Ilara felt the life inside her grow stronger, a constant reminder of their unique bond. Zyron remained attentive, providing guidance, protection, and companionship. Together, they navigated not only the challenges of survival, but also the emotional complexity of creating life in a world where nothing was guaranteed. One afternoon, while gathering food near a rocky outcrop, Ilara stumbled again. Xiren caught her immediately, and she rested against him, feeling the weight of both fatigue and the growing life within her. "I'm not used to feeling so dependent," she admitted quietly. "Dependence is not weakness," he replied. "It is trust, and trust is necessary for survival." Ilara looked up at him, realizing that she had come to rely on Xiren in ways she had never imagined. It was more than physical support. It was emotional strength, guidance, and reassurance. She trusted him completely, and she knew that he trusted her in return. As they returned to their shelter, the twin moons rising in the sky, Ilara felt a deep sense of connection to the alien and the life growing within her. She realized that survival had brought them together, but now something far greater was emerging, a bond that transcended species, built on trust, care, and shared experience. By the end of this part of their journey, Ilara and Xiren had grown stronger individually and as a pair. The desert planet, once a place of fear and isolation, had become a home, a place of learning, adaptation, and the quiet miracles of life. And within Ilara, a new life was beginning, a symbol of hope and the extraordinary possibilities that could emerge when two beings from different worlds came together in trust, respect, and courage. The desert wind had calmed, leaving the planet bathed in the soft light of the twin moons. Ilara stirred, her body heavier than usual, and Xiren was immediately at her side. He had sensed the shift long before she realized what it meant. "It is time," he said quietly, his voice calm but alert. Ilara nodded, gripping his arm for support. The journey they had shared, the storms, the isolation, the survival, the small moments of connection, had led to this. She trusted him completely, and she knew he would guide her through what was to come. Together, they moved to the safest area of their shelter, the part reinforced with stones and layered sand. Xiren adjusted the soft materials beneath her, creating a space that was both secure and comfortable. "You are strong," he said, placing his hand over hers. "This life within you is also strong. Trust it." Ilara breathed deeply, feeling a mixture of fear and awe. She had faced countless challenges on distant worlds, but nothing had prepared her for this. Life, fragile and yet unyielding, was growing within her, a symbol of the bond they had formed in this harsh, lonely place. The process began slowly, and Xiren remained by her side, monitoring her vitals and guiding her through each step. His alien abilities allowed him to stabilize her when fatigue and pain threatened to overwhelm her. He moved with precision, calm and confident, and Ilara found comfort in his steady presence. Hours passed, and the first cries of life pierced the quiet of the desert night. Ilara gasped, overwhelmed by the sound, and Xiren's eyes shone with a mixture of pride and awe. The small being was a perfect blend of their two species, a symbol of survival, cooperation, and hope. Ilara reached out, her hands trembling, and held the newborn carefully. It was soft and warm, its small features a combination of human and alien traits. Xiren watched with reverence, his hands hovering near the child, ready to assist. "It is beautiful," he whispered, his voice almost lost in the wind. Tears filled Ilara's eyes. She had survived the desert, endured exhaustion, and faced the unknown. But this moment surpassed everything she had imagined. The child was proof that life could thrive, even in the most unlikely places, and that humans, with courage and adaptability, could overcome any obstacle. Over the next days, they adapted to the new reality of caring for the child. Ilara's fatigue remained, but Zyron assisted tirelessly, providing nourishment, protection, and comfort. They worked together seamlessly, instinctively understanding each other's needs and responding with care. Alara marveled at the resilience of the child, who seemed to inherit both her human determination and Zyron's alien adaptability. The hybrid baby thrived, feeding well and growing quickly, a living symbol of the extraordinary possibilities that could emerge when two species cooperated and trusted one another. As the desert days passed, Alara and Zyron began to explore further, seeking better shelter and safer sources of food and water for their small family. The harsh environment still held dangers, but the challenges now felt different. They were no longer just surviving for themselves. They were surviving for life, for the future that had begun in the small, warm body in Alara's arms. One afternoon, they discovered a hidden canyon with a freshwater pool, protected from the harsh winds and filled with edible plants. Zyron analyzed the surroundings carefully, ensuring it was safe from predators. "This will be suitable for us," he said, his tone steady. "It will allow the child to grow strong." Alara smiled, holding the child close. "It's perfect," she said softly. "A place where we can finally be safe." They settled in the canyon, building a more permanent shelter using a combination of alien methods and human ingenuity. Alara marveled at how natural the process had become, how seamlessly she and Zyron could combine their skills to adapt to the environment. Each improvement they made was not just for themselves, but for the child, for the future. Evenings were quiet and peaceful. Alara often sat watching the twin moons rise while Zyron stood nearby, vigilant and calm. Sometimes she spoke softly, telling the child stories of Earth, of the stars, of the adventures that had led them to this remote world. Zyron listened, occasionally adding insights about Kyle Rin and the lessons he had learned from his own species. Over time, Alara noticed small changes in Zyron as well. He seemed more attuned to emotion, more patient, and more aware of the subtle nuances of human behavior. Their bond had grown into something deeper than friendship or trust. It was partnership, mutual respect, and a quiet love that had been forged in adversity. One evening, as the desert wind whispered through the canyon, Alara looked at Zyron and spoke softly. "I never imagined life could be like this. So hard, yet so full of wonder. It is the nature of life to endure, to adapt, and to surprise us," he replied. "You have shown that humanity's strength is in its resilience, its hope, and its courage." Alara smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. The desert planet, once a place of fear and isolation, had become a home. Their small family, a human, an alien, and a hybrid child, represented not just survival, but the extraordinary potential of life. Days turned into weeks, and the child continued to grow, learning from both parents. Zyron demonstrated techniques for climbing rocks, sensing water sources, and avoiding dangers, while Alara nurtured emotional development, curiosity, and human intelligence. The child thrived, a living testament to the harmony that could exist between species. Despite the harshness of the desert, there were moments of joy. Alara and Zyron laughed together, shared stories, and marveled at the beauty of the twin suns setting over the dunes. They watched their child explore the small oasis, stumbling over rocks and examining plants, learning the ways of the world with curiosity and determination. Alara realized that survival had given way to life. They were no longer just enduring, they were building, teaching, and nurturing. The child represented hope, the proof that humans could adapt, cooperate, and thrive, even in the most unlikely circumstances. As the months passed, Zyron and Alara worked tirelessly to ensure a stable future. They reinforced their shelter, cultivated more plants, and created systems for gathering and storing water. Each improvement was a testament to human ingenuity and alien adaptability working in harmony. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Ilara held the child close and looked at Xiren. "We've done something incredible here," she said softly. "Yes," he replied, his eyes reflecting the fading light. "Together we have created life. Together we endure. Together we hope." The desert, once a symbol of fear and isolation, had become a place of possibility. Ilara realized that humanity's true strength was not in dominance or technology alone. It was in resilience, adaptability, and the capacity to form bonds that could bridge even the vastest differences. As they watched the twin moons rise, casting gentle light over the canyon, Ilara felt a deep sense of peace. They had survived storms, predators, and isolation. They had nurtured life in the most unlikely place, and they had discovered something extraordinary, that hope, courage, and connection could turn even a barren desert into a home. Xiren stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on hers, both vigilant and relaxed. Their child slept peacefully between them, unaware of the trials they had overcome and the adventures yet to come. In that moment, Ilara understood the true meaning of survival. It was not merely about enduring, but about creating, nurturing, and protecting life. It was about courage, ingenuity, and the extraordinary strength of the human spirit. And in the vastness of the desert, on a planet untouched by civilization, a human, an alien, and a new life thrived together. They were proof that even in the most desolate places, hope could flourish, and humanity's remarkable resilience could create wonders that transcended worlds. Ilara smiled as she watched Xiren and their child. Life had won, not just survival, but flourishing, love, and connection. And for the first time since the crash, she felt truly at home. The twin suns dipped behind the horizon, the sky turning shades of red and purple. The desert whispered around them, no longer a threat, but a world full of possibilities. In that quiet, eternal moment, Ilara knew that the story of survival had become the story of life, hope, and the unyielding strength of humanity. And so, in the heart of the alien desert, they lived, not merely as survivors, but as a family, a living testament to what could happen when courage, trust, and compassion met the infinite possibilities of the universe.